good morning, and good afternoon to in-house counsel from all across North America. Welcome to In-House Connect. My name is Shai Mahani. I am the CEO and co-founder of In-House Connect, and I'm thrilled to have you here with us today. Thank you for spending your breakfast time or your lunch time with us. And of course, special thanks to our wonderful sponsor, Pramada, and our fantastic presenter, the amazing Lucy Bassli. For those of you who are here for the first time, let me give you a quick bit of background on In-House Connect. In-House Connect started 11 years ago as a New York City-based in-person meetup group for in-house counsel. Every month, In-House Connect would organize free CLE classes, which were followed by cocktail networking receptions. And every 6 months, we would organize fun and festive networking mixers. Over the years, we've helped thousands of in-house counsel connect with peers and outside counsel alike. The group was humming along, and then, of course, COVID hit. We couldn't meet in person, so we went online, and it's been a fantastic transition. We've been able to attract a much larger audience of in-house counsel, truly from coast to coast. And we've been able to feature high caliber speakers like the one we have today, who I'm going to introduce in just a few minutes. This is our 26th event of the year so far. And I'm wondering, are you here for the first time or have you been with us before? So let me know in this poll. And next week we have two fantastic events, one on ADR, alternative dispute resolution, and another on litigation essentials 2 weeks from then. So June 16th, we're going to have another CLM themed event with our fantastic sponsor, Pramada. And I want to invite Justin from Pramada to say a few words and give a heads up about our upcoming event. So take it away, Justin.
Great. Thanks, Shai. Thanks for the opportunity today. And Lucy, thanks for sharing a little time at the beginning as well. Like a lot of people on this call, this is also my first time. And I'm really excited. It's been a fantastic experience, Shai. You run a really great organization here, and I'm looking forward to continuing to collaborate with you. I'm also really excited about this particular topic. So my name is Justin Sweisberger. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer at Pramada. But before that, I've been in the industry for 15 years in a variety of roles. And I think fundamentals is one of the things that often gets overlooked in our space, where people jump right to technology, right to the fascinating, next big thing and go for the 360 dunk before making the layup. And what I'm really excited about is typically when we work with our clients, we find that what they think is a technology problem is often a process or a policies or procedures problem. And if you get that in order first, the technology and automation of that kind of takes care of itself. So that's what we're about. That's what we're really excited about. In terms of Pramada, just a quick intro on the fundamentals. That's what we focus on as well, which is how do we get things organized? How do you know exactly what's in your contracts when you need them? And that's what we focus on for our clients. As you mentioned, we have a webinar coming up, and we're really excited. We want to make that interactive. So we have a poll, which will be coming up right now, actually, where we want to understand what are your top frustrations in contract management or CLM frustrations. We really want to understand so we can tailor the content. Very excited to make this interactive. I'll let people go ahead, and it definitely looks like there's a trending winner already. People don't like looking through contracts, apparently, which is great. So I don't know, Shai, how long you want this to go, but this is a really fantastic poll. And it keeps going up. So it looks like 60% of the people are really so far struggling with the manual search and review. This will make a fantastic webinar here on June 16th. And with that, Shai, I will hand it back over to you.
The event on the 16th is going to be about the top 5 CLM frustrations. So clearly we have a number one, a clear leader. So we're definitely going to tackle that. So stay tuned for more information on that. Thank you, Justin. Thank you, Pramada. And stay tuned for more information on that event with Pramada on the 16th. Today's event, CLM Fundamentals for in-house counsel, key steps for ensuring a smooth CLM journey. Our presenter today is Lucy Bassli. Lucy Bassli is an attorney, the author of The Simple Guide to Legal Innovation, CLM Simplified, and is the founder and principal of InnoLaw Group, PLLC. As a former assistant general counsel of legal ops and contracting at Microsoft, she redefined how legal work is done and created one of the first managed service engagements with a law firm. In 2015, she was named to the National Law Journal list of outstanding women lawyers and an ACC Value Champion in 2016. Before joining Microsoft, Lucy was an associate at Davis, Wright & Tremaine in Seattle in the commercial bankruptcy and business transaction practice practices. Lucy is a highly sought-after legal industry expert working with corporate legal departments and law firms on modernizing legal service delivery, automation, smart risk-taking, and alternative resourcing models. She trains and consults with lawyers to take best practices in the legal industry to a whole new level. Lucy is the real deal, and we're so fortunate and excited to have her on with us today to teach us how to ensure a smooth CLM journey, which is not an easy thing. So without further ado, I will turn the virtual mic over to Lucy.
Thank you so much. And thank you everybody for joining us. I always get very excited when I have a group that is interested in hearing about CLM. It happens to be my favorite subject. Yes, sad but true. Just a little bit more about my background, help you understand that I feel your pain. I come from in-house. Yes, my last title included the words legal operations in it, but I'm a commercial transactions lawyer. I spent 13 years in-house at Microsoft doing contracts as the lead lawyer for the global procurement function. That was hundreds and thousands, and then tens of thousands of contracts over time, flew through the combination of processes and systems and outsourcing and all the things that we did to help make it more efficient. But here's the thing, contracting is everybody's problem. It's how money's made. It's how money's spent across every company. So it's something that lawyers really can't get away from once you come in-house. So let's dive in. It is my favorite topic. I would love for people to be interactive. I'll do my best to keep up with the chat. Shai will certainly prompt me as needed, but I would love to keep the conversation going, or else I will talk nonstop on this topic, and I don't want any of you to doze off accidentally. So CLM simplified. Let's jump right in. I already said it, contracting is everybody's problem. It really is. You know what I hear every day, day in and day out, and what I do these days in the last few years since I've left Microsoft is work with corporate law departments, every shape, every size, on their contracting problems. And yes, a lot of it is with the goal to automate, and we will get to technology. We will talk about technology throughout this session, and we'll have follow-up sessions also, and hopefully this will be a series on CLM that you'll all find useful, because it really is on top of everybody's mind lately. Too many contracts, not enough time. The business is frustrated. Legal's a black hole. Legal gets blamed for contracting problems, kind of first and foremost. It's almost the easiest scapegoat in every enterprise, every company, is to just blame legal, right? When we hear contract, we hear legal is involved. That's some of the core problems and issues that we want to get into, because contracting, it's complicated. It is a lot of people and process and tools, and it flows across the company, and it isn't just really one department's problem, but certainly legal is squarely in the middle of that. Contracting touches so many different departments, and there's questions of ownerships, there's questions of decision making, but always legal is part of contracting, and we know that, and that's why I think you are here today. Now, when it comes to contracting, in the last few years, the topic somehow immediately shifts to technology. When I say contracting, people are thinking CLM tech. When I say CLM, people are thinking technology. It's a system, it's a tool. I need a tool. There's so many tools out there. 67% of chief legal officers that were surveyed by the Association of Corporate Counsel, which I would say is one of the authoritative entities on access to internal legal leaders. I say that because there's a lot of surveying going on by a lot of interested parties, but ACC I love because they really are neutral. 67% are looking at automating contracting over the next 12 months. And this is a survey from 2021, which is still pretty good. And of course, everything in the last 2 years has been extra complicated, but certainly this is a space that has not slowed down. There is a heightened frenzy and interest around CLM technology specifically. A couple of things that I'm hearing all the time. I mean, my favorite quote, what contract management system do you recommend? Actually, I haven't looked at the chat in the last couple of seconds. The question might already be there. It may not, but it's coming. It comes every time there's a conversation around contracting and CLM. What system should I get? Which system do I recommend? We're looking at a couple of systems. We've been looking at systems. System. We'll get to why that question is oftentimes asked too early, and people may not be quite ready for the answer. A couple of more interesting data points. 56% of in-house lawyers today are using some sort of technology related to their contract management. That's great. That's a high number. that also includes a lot of types of systems. Salesforce is not meant for contract management, but probably is doing a part in contracting, and lawyers are forced into it, have to interact with it, whether they want to or not. That's just the realities of their day job. So that number can be a little bit misleading, because I don't want anybody to get a sudden feel of FOMO. Oh my God, half law departments are using technology for contract automation. Why aren't we? It might be a little bit misleading, but yes, there is a lot of focus on contract technology. A lot of money is flowing into the space as well. A lot of venture capital funds. What does that mean? Well, it's creating a frenzy of activity, needless to say. I'd say those of you who are familiar with kind of the world of legal tech at all, or kept up with it, or certainly it's coming into your inbox whether you want to or not, the news flashes and the articles about technology investments. There was kind of a little bit of a frenzy like this around electronic discovery, maybe 12 to 15 years ago, but not since then have we seen such a boom in investment in one particular area of legal tech. And in this case, this area is contracting. The numbers are high by all accounts. Proportionately, there's a lot of money flowing in here. Of course, that means activity. That means there are new systems being born all the time. There are those systems who've been at this for a while, like Pramada, our sponsor today, which is they've been around. They've got interesting things to say. They've got interesting perspectives. There are new systems that are learning. They were born in the cloud. They have different perspectives. They have interesting angle on what law departments need. I do want to spend a little bit of time on this. The only reason I am is just to orient everybody around why is this topic so hot. One is there's a need. There's a market need. You're all here because you're struggling with CLM in some capacity. So yes, there's a real need. There's a real market pull for this, but also there's a push of information from that CLM technology space where there's investment, there is marketing money, it's coming at you, you're seeing it everywhere. So I want to orient ourselves on what really matters. I want to orient us also around what you can do that isn't tech related or that is related to getting you ready for technology. This isn't about to automate or not to automate. Technology's here, it's necessary. By the way, I love tech. My legal career, I grew up in a technology company in Microsoft. I live in Seattle. I can't get away from tech. So I want to be very clear that when I say I want to talk about a lot of things except the tech, it's not because I'm anti-technology at all. I want technology to be useful for you. I want you to implement it and be successful with it. In order to do that, we've got to do some homework. We've got to do some prep and some readiness. So let's start also with the poll. Now I am curious, for those of you who have joined us today, how many of you are in this space looking for CLM system? And we're kind of, I've tried to create different buckets and I'm sure there's some overlap in them, but I'm really curious how many are actively searching. You are reading information, you are looking at demos, you have done demos, you are trying to decipher, you've attended trade shows, you've attended virtual trade shows. How many of you are just beginning the search, which means, wow, I need something. I gotta figure out what I need. Some of you have already implemented something, either recently or in the middle of implementation, or you're in the thick of things. And some of you are probably going, oh my God, I just don't know where to start. So I'd love to see where these things land. In the meanwhile, I'll do a quick just check of the chat, or Shai, if you've seen anything pop up.
I'm looking at the chat. There's an interesting comment from Lauren. She inherited a legacy CLM and she's trying to, where the organization's trying to figure out, shortcomings are due from the implementation, which is a huge whole subject in and of itself, right? Which many don't realize, or if it's not the right CLM for their need. I'm sure many are in that bucket.
Yep, Lauren, I'm so glad you brought that up. Absolutely. That is why I am not a professional pollster. That is a great additional option we should have added here. Yes, a lot of people are in your shoes. Absolutely, a lot of them are in your shoes. In fact, many of the clients that I deal with are on their second, third. I've got one that is on their fourth CLM journey right now, CLM system journey specifically. That is another active area for sure that we are seeing where, yes, you adopt something. It's very easy to come in after something's been implemented and find the gaps and the problems. Not because they're not real gaps and real problems. Oftentimes it goes back to the initial goals of that implementation, the initial goals for why they were searching for technology to begin with. So it's a great it's a great addition here to understanding, again, the folks that are on this call. And I'm looking at the results now. It looks like we're pretty close to done here at this point. Pretty interesting split. So it does look like over, third. Yeah, I mean, we're in it's almost an even split. Again, I'm no expert, but I think if those of you who could see the results, I don't know, Shai, if we can share those now.
Yeah, share them. People should be able to see them, but I'll read them off just in case. So 18% are actively looking, 22% are beginning the search, 27% recently selected a system and are planning the implementation, and a whopping 33% are not sure where to start. So you've come to the right place. I'm going to stop sharing now.
Fantastic. Perfect. Well, let's then dive into things. I will offer one quick disclaimer. I am recovering from COVID, almost recovered, but every once in a while I'm going to grab a tissue. So I'm going to be sorry for that. And every once in a while I might have to cough, and I'm sorry about that. But I think we're all in this new world together. So if you will just bear with me when I need to do that. Okay. We're going to start with the basics. What is CLM? Contract Lifecycle Management is not a system. It is contract lifecycle management. It is a series of steps, processes, functions, across departments, different people in different roles doing different things with documents, with related artifacts in order to accomplish a business purpose. Contracting is a business purpose. We know that. We forget that. We as in-house counsel get so focused on the document and what's inside the four corners and negotiating it beautifully and duking it out with the other side that sometimes we get a little carried away and forget we got to get the deal done for the purpose of that deal. But I will not digress into my philosophies on contracting, but we will talk about the role of legal in contracting for sure as we go through this. Let me walk us a little bit through this life cycle so that everybody can get a good sense of what all CLM is, so that when you are thinking about technology, you can hone in on which aspects of this life cycle are you trying to automate. Not all technology is good at all of these phases. That's a fact. There are a lot of end-to-end contract lifecycle management systems. End-to-end CLM, we hear it all the time. I'm going to be careful with my words, but not too careful, because my goal here is to really help bust some myths and to be the truth teller in this space. And by the way, I'm not connected with any one CLM system. That's the beauty of the vantage point I can come at this. There is not one that is amazing at all of the steps. They really just isn't. There are very few that are decently good at all the various steps. So most systems are deeply good in certain parts, and the technologies, the actual R&D, the IP, the tech development that happens is quite different. If you're looking at, I don't know, let's look at this, storing of a document, something that pushes a contract into storage and then is able to extract valuable and useful information, which I believe Pramada, that's kind of their sweet spot. And we can have them chime in and if we have any questions about that specifically. Other technologies are really good on the other side of this loop. All right, they help create beautiful templates, clause libraries, pushing in content, the right words in the right space, working through the logic to help create beautiful templates. Some are actually excelling at the workflow. They push things through. They push across this life cycle. They help move the document from one person to another system and out of another system. And that's kind of workflow. And again, we will dive in deeper into technology in a later session, I promise you. But it's very important to understand that contract lifecycle management is so much more than just technology. You all know that because you live it and breathe it every single day. So there's the pre-contracting phase. This is a phase where lawyers would love to spend a little bit more time with their business so that they can help preempt and prevent some of the things that then flow down and come into our inbox once the contract is already initiated. Well, we know that. Pre-contracting, if you think about it, RFPs, whether you're responding or building your RFP. And by the way, when we think about contracting, it's very important that we all understand everybody here comes from different types of enterprises, different types of companies and businesses. Some of you are deep into the revenue contracting. The contracting flow that comes through your desk is on the sales side. You're helping the company make money somehow. Maybe it's not sales directly, but it is revenue generating. Other side, buy side. A lot of you are just trying to help the company keep its costs down, and procurement contracts, by the way, they're kind of a thorn in everybody's side. Everybody has these, and very few companies have dedicated procurement counsel. It's the role I had in a company the size of Microsoft. Few are in that place. And so it often becomes the problem of many other in-house lawyers who really did not plan on doing procurement contracts. Then, of course, there's the beautiful NDA, my favorite non-buy, non-sell contract that is going to be one of my favorite. I pick on it a lot. So I'm warning you all now, if anybody loves NDAs, I pick on these because they are oftentimes overly complicated. They take often way too long than they should. And they're a precursor to just try to get some business done. And yet they often get caught, and they often get caught illegal. They're also a great place to start with automation. For those of you who aren't quite sure where to start, NDAs are great. So pre-contracting, though, we want lawyers to spend their time getting ahead of the deal with their business. This has really nothing to do with CLM process and systems and automation. This is about, of course, relationship management and becoming a true trusted advisor and business colleague to the enterprise you're a part of. That's why we go in-house. We love being part of the business. So get into that pre-contracting phase with the business so that you can prevent some of the later stuff that comes your way that we all know. We just want to shake our heads and are sad by what we see. Now, a request for a contract support. That's really the first phase when I think about a CLM system, CLM workflows. It's that first step when the business asks legal for help. It might be, as we all get, a forward with an attachment that says, can you take a look at this? It might be a Slack message, a Teams chat. It might be, God forbid, a text on your phone. It could be whatever other ways you collaborate and communicate with your business counterparts, but they're requesting help. This request phase is critical because we know how much time lawyers spend going back and forth to just understand, what do you need? Help me help you. That's the request phase. We're really trying to understand, as lawyers, how do we get started to help you with your contracts if we don't quite know what it is that you need. Ideally, a request comes with some basic information, some background, a little story about what the contract's purpose is, a little history on what's happened so far in the discussions and the negotiations, or any agreements, verbal or via email, that might have helped. Comes with some ancillary documents. Maybe there's a spreadsheet of some deal terms. Maybe there's a PowerPoint explaining the relationship that they want to seek with this other party. Whatever it is, that's the purpose of the request phase. We want to gather and take in as much information at that very first touch so that we could be more efficient. I'm going to use words like first touch, touch again, feedback loops, because we want to start talking in a processed way. We want to remember the contract lifecycle management, in effect, is a series of processes and steps. If we can step out of the legal practice for a minute, the practice of law, the magic that we do as lawyers once we get our hands on the contract, we are here to facilitate a very complex set of steps and processes where we want to get a contract pushed through for the benefit of the business as quickly, as most efficiently as possible, while of course mitigating risk. After all, that's the job we balance every day. Now, create in the next phase. We've gotten the request, we've looked into what needs to be done, and we're going to create the template itself, the contract, the starting point. This is a great place for legal departments to think about how they can save time. A lot of times the create phase can move faster if you've got good knowledge management already in your legal department, if you've got good sharing of information, samples, templates, prior executed versions that you use. We know we all start with those. We're usually feverishly though looking for those in our C drive, heaven forbid, OneDrive, G drive, wherever you're storing your own work product. But that create takes a lot of our brain time. It takes a lot of focus. Really, biggest value proposition oftentimes we bring is in this create phase to get the right document started. That is in a situation where we're not reviewing third-party paper. This is where you're starting your own document. Sometimes really you can fall into the create where you've received the third-party document, and you're now trying to plug in your favorite words. So it's not quite the negotiate yet, but it's really formulating your first stab at the document. And then negotiate. That is our highest value prop, I think. That's probably where, if we're honest, that's what we love the best about contracting. We love to get in there, get into it with the other side, work through the negotiation, and substantively really use the skill set that we're most excited about having after law school, negotiating contracts. Negotiate is today largely unautomated. We all know that. It lives in our email, goes back and forth. We get on the phone, we get on video calls now, but we're exchanging drafts back and forth. And that can go on, as we know, for months. There's tremendous opportunity here to become a little bit more efficient, but this is probably also one of the last places where I'm seeing technology really being a strong value add, except for the way they can help with the content inside the four corners from the perspective of clause library, so that you're faster at plugging in and editing, but the actual negotiation dance is still largely happening in the ways that we've become accustomed via email and on the phone, and sometimes in person, and maybe again soon. The approval phase is one that we all know exists. We don't quite often know why some contracts need approval or from whom, or we go kind of on our gut of, hey, I want the CFO to take a look at this, or maybe the head of sales, or maybe somebody in IT should look at this. Whatever it is that happens is oftentimes in our brains. We in legal are often the quarterback once we get into the negotiation, and we are seeking approvals. We're seeking them sometimes via email, usually via email. They're often confused also with signature. Somehow we think, well, if we could just get them to sign, well, then that's an approval. Or I'll just add a bunch more signature blocks into the contract because at least that's been automated. And maybe we're using electronic signature and I can get approvals that way. Sometimes the legal review, the fact that legal is involved, is some form of an approval, but approvals are a great place to look for efficiencies. Really understanding who should be approving what types of contracts and keeping that list as tight as possible, appreciating that not everybody should be approving everything. Not everybody needs to get a say if you're just trying to get some contracts across the fence. What you're going to hear me alluding to a lot is really smart risk taking at the end of the day. A lot of this is about where can you take risks to move through these phases quicker. Most of them are substantive risks. A lot of them are also operational risks. When can legal let go? When can legal step out? When can legal enable and trust the business to handle some parts of this? Then execute. This is signature. That's all this is. I'm hoping most of you are using electronic signature, not again to generate FOMO, but by now you should be. We should be in a place as legal professionals that we are comfortable with electronic signature for most of our contract types. Big statement. I'm happy to debate it. I'm happy to get into it. We've done a ton of research on this in my past and in my day job when I was in-house at Microsoft, but the realities are we're ready for this. It's time. It's just like moving into the cloud. Next phase, we got to store the document. Please store your contracts in a cloud-based system. Shared drives, online network drives, certainly C drives and desktops are not the right place for contracts. Again, I get to say these things. I get a lot of reaction, and I'm happy to talk through those thoughts on that. But cloud storage is safe. It is the right place for your important corporate documents. Absolutely is. It is also the best place to store documents when you want efficiencies. If you want to share across a department, if you want to share with new colleagues, with junior colleagues that you're educating and training, giving them access to online storage is the best way to do it. You should not be emailing samples to them. You should not be sending them documents in kind of the we're going to call them the old-fashioned ways. So let's move your contracts into a good storage mechanism, a good repository, a system in the cloud that you can at least push your contracts to. Once you've put them in there, there are incredible opportunities that you will open up for accessing the information inside the four corners of those documents. The way those documents relate to each other, we know how much energy goes into negotiating a beautiful master agreement of some sort. And then we know what happens the minute that first schedule, statement of work, work order, whatever you call it, that hanging baby document, baby contract under it, the first one maybe is still connected and you can find it. But then comes the second, the third, the fourth, then come amendments, amendments to the master, amendments to each of those other related documents, addenda, exhibits. I've heard there's all kinds of versions and words of things that we create in order to have that good engagement, right? That transaction is what we're trying to document. The documents become really, really complex, and there's no better way to tick and tie them together than through an online storage mechanism, also called a repository, right? The phase, we call it storing. That's the phase of the CLM, but what you're looking at this is really, it's a repository. You need a place to put your contracts. Then there's post-signature management, the actual terms of the contract. I was surprised recently when a general counsel told me that they, in legal, manage the terms. They are on the hook for knowing expiration dates, knowing renewal dates, but they're also on the hook for some of the business obligations, the actual triggers of business steps that need to be taken. I was a little surprised. I hadn't heard that really before. Maybe it's unique, but they're claiming to be not the only one and have certainly a peer community where legal is on the hook for that. Now, I know we're often asked, hey, can you help me figure out when this expires? But we're not accountable for managing, or I'm going to venture to say we really shouldn't be. So this is a great opportunity to create efficiencies by enabling the business, by empowering them and educating and training them on how to do this themselves. Now, enabling them with some technology and a good system they can go to do this is probably very valuable. Again, technology can help in these various steps, but it may not be the magic bullet. I do want to pause for a second because there's a lot here and I'm not expecting you to read. I will walk us through the maturity scale to help you orient yourselves on where you fit and maybe start seeing, what are some of the things you can start doing today that can help improve your contracting experience. Just want to take a quick look at the questions. I don't know, Shai, if anything's jumped out at you, but I'm happy to. I do see the comment around Chinese companies. Absolutely, there are still restrictions around manual hand ink signatures. Appreciate that those are the realities within which we operate. We can't do anything about that for sure. The focus here really for electronic signature are those where there aren't real restrictions. There are just kind of the concerns of doing something differently, the concerns of trusting a technology platform to electronically sign. I still do see law departments struggling with accepting it for US-based non-disclosure agreements. Again, my favorite example. Cloud versions being inconsistent. I do see a comment here. Sometimes the cloud version of Word is not consistent with non-cloud versions of Word that a client must be using. Yes, I can see where there shouldn't be inconsistencies if it is a .doc document. If it is a Word document, whether you open it in an online cloud-based Word app or a desktop Word app, it really shouldn't look different. If it does, I will take it back to my alma mater and understand what is happening there, because it shouldn't be. Where it gets complex is when you're trying to use a Word document and then opening it up from Google Drive or converting from a Google Doc to a Word doc. Yes, those things happen and get a little bit complex, but from a pure repository perspective, hopefully you're able to store it in a cloud-based system. And perhaps here it isn't about Word, which version of Word you're using, but where do you store that final version? And if you're on a Microsoft stack, certainly OneDrive is great for that. OneDrive or SharePoint, and they play together very nicely. Let's see, any other comments here? Yes, wet signatures, I'm seeing all of that, fantastic. I will move in here if we don't have anything I can.
Go ahead, Lucy.
Okay. Now, why did I develop this maturity scale? I realized that not everybody's in the same place, and every law department that I've interacted with they're doing something along different ways of improving their contracting. Again, CLM, we saw there are a bunch of phases to it. You can make improvements at any of those phases for the purpose of improving your day job. For dealing with that, really, it's like this deluge, and we know it's a tidal wave of contracting that just doesn't stop coming at you. There are improvements you can make along the way. I tried to break it down into 4 key categories where I see opportunities for improvement, and then for, again, moving you along this kind of maturity scale. Not everything is for everybody, I will say also very, very clearly. There are those things everybody can do tomorrow to improve their contracting experience, to improve their contracting processes at their company. And that's the whole point of the series that we're putting together here. It's don't be overwhelmed by all the technology that's coming at you and what you're hearing about and the FOMO around CLM tech. This is a way to orient yourselves around some of the actions you can take any day, no matter what size of your department, no matter what enterprise you're in, where you sit geographically, or what your corporate culture is for change. There are things you can do. So think of these as levers, and let's walk through them a little bit and see which of these levers you might be able to pull. What we will do in our future sessions is we will do deep dives into these various parts and work on some hands-on useful tips a little bit deeper. But for now, at a high level, let's walk through these. Policy, what legal reviews? This is probably the first thing I ask every law department I talk to. Are you clear on what legal should be touching when it comes to contract and what they shouldn't be? And even the what I break down into two chunks. What are the types of contracts themselves? The actual substantive, again, let's talk about the inside the four corners. Which of those types of deals should legal be involved in? That's one aspect. The other aspect is which aspect of that life cycle should legal be involved in? When should legal get looped in when it comes to that entire CLM life cycle? What's the right role for legal to play? Too many times, legal is, again, not to use a very US-centric analogy, but the quarterback. They are making sure everything is happening. The minute they get looped into a contract, they are making sure it is getting the right input from the right people. They're making sure all the right words are in it. Of course, that's the core, but they're even helping the decisions on the business side be facilitated. Service level agreements, invoicing terms, payment terms, approvals of deliverables. I mean, you name it, legal is in there, helping facilitate all of that. And then I see legal pushing through for signatures. I have a current client where they are actively in the role of checking in with the business on why it hasn't been signed yet, or has it been signed yet, or what's the status, or what's the problem. They feel accountable for making sure that contract gets all the way through to the end. I'm going to say again, hopefully not too controversial, but that is not a good use of an attorney's time. It might be the good use of another professional in the law department. Maybe there's a contract manager, contract administrator, a paraprofessional, legal admin, that maybe it makes sense and it's a valued part of the process and it's agreed upon across the organization, across the company, that, yes, legal department will play that role, but definitely attorneys should not be chasing down signatures. So when I think about that legal review policy, where does legal want to play? That's the first step. Often that in and of itself is an exercise. It's an exercise that needs to be facilitated as a conversation from the general counsel at the very first step. We need the general counsel to be very clear on what they want their organization to spend time on. And thinking through their organization, that means they have to know if they're just a group of lawyers, not just, but if it is made up only of attorneys, that is high cost time to the company. So the policy will look different for that kind of a legal department than a legal department that is quite balanced and has a big team of other professionals. And so what your policy looks like will be very different depending on your legal organization. It'll also be very different depending on the enterprise you're in and the business that you're supporting. Legal policies can also help enable the business in a way that really puts the burden on the business to say, hey, the policy for legal is only involve us in these very few specific types of engagements. Few, not because the volume is low, but the number of types of engagements you want to be involved in. They are in your highest risk, highest complexity, top dollar type of engagements. So you can write a policy like that, or you can write a policy that does the opposite. It says, hey, legal is going to be reviewed and involved in all kinds of contracts, except for these types of contracts where business, you're empowered. So you can make it inclusive or exclusive, depending on, again, what works for you. We'll spend a little bit more time on policy drafting later on in this session today as well, actually. It's worthy of the time because it is such an important foundation to everything around contracting and when it comes to law departments and the way we spend our time. Now, people, I've already alluded to this. Who inside your law department should be touching contracts inside the four corners and the process by which those four corners travel around the CLM, and whether they're inside your law department or whether they're external. Have you thought about outsourcing? Outsourcing does not mean offshoring. With the right amount of volume, outsourcing is very, very effective. It's very efficient, and it is likely a really good solution for a lot of law departments that just haven't taken the time to assess whether they have the right people touching contracts or touching the different phases of the contracting lifecycle. So the people part of this it's a big question. Should it be an attorney or can it be a paraprofessional? Should they be an internal attorney or an external attorney? An internal paraprofessional or an external one? All of these are decision points that, again, from the GC down, culturally and philosophically, you can make some decisions to help move you along this maturity model where you are only doing the top key, highest value commercial contracting work in-house, and everything else is outsourced the way it should be in the right scale and scope at the right price point so that business is getting done the most effectively. So people are core to understanding CLM. I'll go a step beyond. People, everything I've just described was all about the legal department, the legal professionals. Let's move outside of legal. CLM is so much about enabling and empowering the business. So if it doesn't need to have an attorney's eyes and you think a paraprofessional can do it, should that paraprofessional be inside of law department? Paralegal, contract manager, contract specialist, or are there really skilled and capable people outside the law department, or should there be, whether there aren't today, but are there departments which should play a really significant role in the contracting life cycle and the contracting process that aren't playing a role today? More so, are there people in other parts of the department that can play a really substantive part inside the four corners of the contract? Why aren't they taking the lead in making sure the contract gets through all the reviews, including legal? Why aren't they taking a lead on the first stab of reviewing the document, putting in comments, doing some edits, asking some questions, and taking that first step? So the people aspect of it is not to be underestimated because, not to sound silly or oversimplified, but it all comes down to the people. We all know that. Our everything about our day jobs, the way things move across companies and project successes and failures tend to come down to the people. Even technology implementations and technology systems tend to come down to the people using them, the people helping implement them, the people helping maintain them after implementation. So a lot is in here around people and how to move across that maturity scale to where you're optimally using the human resources you have, which we all know are the most expensive and highest valued resources of any company. Process. I keep using the word process because all of it is a process. Process becomes overused to where you don't even know what it means anymore. So in this case, really, to be focused, the process is the actual movement. The movement of the contract and how that movement is empowered, enabled, and supported faster and quicker. And that's why I have guidance. I have workflow and guidance as process. You can't have a contract move through the CLM phases quicker than it does today if you don't create the right templates and playbooks. The workflow, the way the contract moves, is very much dependent on the form itself, the template, the document. If it is a 100-page document, it will move naturally slower than a 3-page NDA, as it should. If you've empowered the right people along the way, and your policy has been full of taking smart risks, and let's call it liberal enough, to enable the business, to enable the right people outside the law department to move contracts on their own, you had to have empowered them, created the self-help, the guidance. I'm going to call them the tools, not technology, but the documents that will help them do it faster. And by the way, these are not 300-page manuals. These are useful, simple, business-focused materials that are going to help the process move faster. Again, think of the process as that cycle of phases, that CLM. So process is not to be underestimated either. These all play together, and they all have things you can do independent of each other as well for efficiencies. Process mapping exercises are some of the best use of in-house counsel time, believe it or not. You kind of do it once, and it's almost a once and done for a while, but to take the time out of your day to really sit back and map your process with some detail. And the process is really how a bill becomes a law, but how a contract flows through your company. It is super valuable to just step back and understand, wow, it goes there and it comes back here. Why do they check it again? Do they touch it again? Then you send it there again. What, and you start asking why. A healthy process mapping exercise is really kind of worth its weight in gold per minute spent on it. It does take some time, and it should be facilitated by somebody who knows how to map a process and facilitate that conversation of making improvements along the way. But a simple process mapping exercise, I can't tell you how valuable it is. You'll immediately kind of see, it'll jump out at you, the inefficiencies that right now you feel anecdotally. Everybody's busy and overwhelmed by contracting, but you can't quite point to where, why. So this helps you. It kind of becomes a heat map of opportunities, really. And then, of course, tools, tech-enabled, process and infrastructure. That's the technology. Notice that in stage one, I just leave it blank. I just leave it blank on purpose, because you know what tools we're using today? We're using email. That's okay. We are using maybe online collaboration and sharing of documents, hopefully a little bit. That's okay too. But really, to move along this, you got to get into some basic technologies that are designed around contracting. So SharePoint, OneDrive, G Drive, Dropbox, Box, until recently weren't designed for contracts. Most of them still aren't. Some are starting to create contract repository focused versions of themselves. I think Dropbox, for example, might be one. But that's a pure repository. As you move along the scale, of course, and you get to optimizing, I think a system like Pramada, again, I'm not here, but they're here if we want to ask them questions, but they really optimize. Once you have deposited your document in a system, it can organize those documents and it can extract important information. And really, to get to that optimized phase, you are using technology to help manage the words inside that four corners and to help manage the relationships between all these different contracts and the baby contracts and the amendments and all that spider web that happens. I put technology, last and at the bottom because it should come after you've started making improvements in some of these spaces, or at least in parallel. You really can't jump to technology before you've done some of this precision questioning and a little bit of a look in the mirror of how you're doing on your policy creation, on your allocation of people, and whether or not your processes have been optimized and the guidance has been created. Oh, a great place. I will pause there for a second and just to see if we've got anything. Who know how to process map? I see questions. I see great questions coming in. I also saw data. We will get into data in a minute as well. What do you mean by someone who knows how to process map? I will answer that question. And what would be an equivalent exercise? Great question. Because to me it's come naturally because I saw the value of it in the course of my job as a regular lawyer. We're not trained to map processes. When I think of mapping a process years ago, I'd be like, yeah, I know how it flows. They come to me, they ask me for a contract, I do this, I do that. And I kind of describe the process in 4 or 5 sentences, and I think it's done. If I had it quickly available, I would share with you what a good process map looks like. A process map is a really precise look into how things move across the company, across people, across tools. Think of it as little, it's a box that starts with ask legal for contract review. So that is in a work stream where the business is asking. Now with that, we're going to have a bunch of questions. They ask in email, in Slack, in a team chat. I don't know where they're asking, but they're asking. That already is going to prompt some questions. We'll pause on those. We move to the next step. They ask legal. Legal then asks the business back some questions. We now create a loop. So documenting that in a visual way where you can step back and see loops and see a whole bunch of boxes maybe in the workflow of legal, but the business is only tapped once or twice, and maybe the head of sales is only tapped once or twice, or the sales team. You're going, wow, why does legal have so many steps here? So the process mapping exercise is actually having people who, you might have heard Six Sigma, these kind of process experts, they're now being brought into law departments to help facilitate a process mapping exercise. It is truly where you sit for several hours, if not several days, and cover either a whiteboard, a chalkboard with sticky notes, and create an actual map using probably like Visio or Lucid Charts, if you've heard of those technologies. I say take somebody to facilitate because we simply aren't trained to think that way as attorneys. So it's helpful to bring in an outsider that can do that. That's a lot of what, again, we spend time on, is just trying to create a visual for people of, hey, this is your current state. Here's how it works today. And from that, kind of magic flows in terms of opportunities to make some changes. So it's a great question. There are people who, this is what they're good at. They can do it pretty quickly. And it helps lawyers be precision question through it rather than being told, here, just go do it. You know what I mean? It's kind of like if you're given a blank piece of paper at a doctor's form and they say, hey, put in all your stuff you want us to know for your intake. And you're like, yeah, I'm not feeling great. That's not going to be enough. Let's see if we have some other things. I saw something. Let's see, Kelly, I created a contracting guidebook with sample acceptable provisions when customer red lines deviate from acceptable template provisions with an explanation section and who the subject matter experts are to address the issues in occupational health, etc. It has vastly streamlined the contracting process and improved consistency across our business units. Cheers, congratulations, what you created is, yep, you call it a contracting guidebook. We often hear the word playbooks. Playbooks are now a kind of common term we hear in the CLM conversation. Absolutely, that is a perfect example. Playbooks come in a lot of shapes, sizes. I actually do a whole session on how to think about playbooks, whether they're for the law department, for the business, for empowerment purposes, for outsourcing purposes, but any kind of a guidebook, a playbook is so valuable. I would caution, and it sounds like, Kelly, you figured it out, you've hit the right sweet spot, but caution to make sure you know your audience. You know what the business is capable of consuming in a playbook. I have seen playbooks that, got one current client, their playbook is 125 pages. I hate it. They hate it. They asked me to help with it. I'm like, okay, we can do this. They wouldn't let go of anything in it. I'm like, well, how? What can we do with this? Who really actually knows how to use this playbook? Well, there's 2 or 3 people, the creators, the ones who have lived in it for, oh my gosh, I want to say 10 plus years. That is not a helpful mechanism, I'm sorry to say. It might be good to exist as kind of a one big Bible of sorts, not to use that term inappropriately, maybe for one person who feels like, you know what, this is going to be my single source of truth. And from there, I will create then playbooks that are business focused, playbooks that are made for our paralegals to use, playbooks that are specific to one type of a most commonly used template rather than, these that try to incorporate lots of versions. So just remember your audience, but it sounds like we've got a great example for Kelly. Thank you so much for sharing that. Alternative legal service provider, I see that's coming up. Outsourcing, I will take a minute on outsourcing. Outsourcing is not offshoring. Say it with me. Outsourcing is not offshoring. When I outsourced, I was at Microsoft, we outsourced 20,000 contracts a year. I did not go offshore until about year 4 of our engagement. The service provider I picked, we started with Fargo, North Dakota. I wanted to stay onshore for a variety of reasons, and I'm not shy to repeat those. Number one, there are different cultural differences in how communications are done when you go offshore. If you have an outsourcer engaging with your internal business, it's going to sound differently than if you do it yourself. The expectations and concepts around responsiveness and speed all have to be documented really, really, really carefully. There's a higher turnover rate in areas of high population of lower cost legal professionals that are hard to maintain. Independent decision making and the ability to kind of color outside the lines is a little bit more challenging in some geographies than staying onshore in the US. We do have a session I think we did in the people one that Shai and I are working on as, again, part of the CLM series, where outsourcing will be a whole sub part of this hour of conversation. So outsourcing is important. It is critical. Outsourcing does tend to work better in with companies that have a higher volume. You don't need 20,000 contracts a year like we did at Microsoft, but you do need some consistent, ongoing, recurring amount of contracting in order to outsource effectively, especially if you're trying to outsource to a third party that is like one of these ALSPs, alternative legal service providers, formerly called LSPs, formerly known LPOs, legal process outsourcers. The point is, these are third parties that are not law firms. Their focus is on everything on this slide right here. It's creating these efficiencies and handing contracts in a very operational frame of mind, that we've done it before. Next time it should be faster. We've seen 5 of these. That means the next 25 should be much more efficient. But there's some great opportunities for outsourcing with smaller white glove providers as well that can focus on smaller volumes, slightly higher price point than you'll get probably with the offshored high volume players, but a lot we can get into there. And by the way, I'm happy to answer questions on LinkedIn. You can find me and all that, and we can definitely spend time after the session as well in the networking time if anybody wants to dive in on a few of these. Okay, we did one walk already around the CLM phases. I won't do that again, I promise you, but what I would like to do in this part here real quickly is really just a couple of these bullets to call out where I want us to focus on where legal should be spending time. I touched on it earlier, but I want you all to be able to walk away and really ask yourselves, are we doing enough in pre-contracting? Are we giving the business what they need before they start contracting to know what to ask, what to think about? Are we engaged deeply enough with the business to help prevent some of the later pitfalls that we're all so familiar with? In the request phase, have you thought about creating a very simple intake form in a Word doc, in an email template, something that you can immediately reply back to the business and say, thanks for the email, I need you to fill this in before I can take next steps. That in and of itself can save some cycles of those emails that we fall into. In the create phase, again, a few good templates. Have you looked at your templates? Do you have a few? One even that you have the leverage in the industry to use your first party template. I appreciate not everybody's in that situation. Most aren't. But an NDA, do you have one where you can at least be able to respond when you get one that is just overwhelming? Is it easier to just reply back with your own and say, hey, business, use this? Or by the way, hey, business, go to this SharePoint site or intranet site and always take and grab our NDA first. So think about your templates. There is always progress everybody can make in the templates, and it's a continuous ongoing journey. Trust me, that needs maintenance and nurturing, but there's things you can do today for sure. Negotiate, this is really the real kind of value prop. This is where we spend our time. If you have spent some time on your templates and some clause libraries, if you've thought about some playbooks, fallback provisions, empowerment guides, negotiation guides, any of that, you've documented in a place that's easily retrievable by you and your colleagues, then you can speed up your negotiations. You kind of just have to have something to look to that isn't oh no, what did I do that last time where I changed the cap and the limits of liability to look this way and that worked, let me go dig for it. It's just really nice if you can grab it quickly, but that's really where we bring the biggest value proposition, I believe, as in-house counsel, is negotiating. Approvals. Step back and think, how can you get out of this? Can the finance department do a little more? Sales team, procurement team, you name it. Don't you want other approvers there before you even touch it? Maybe that's something you should think about putting in place. Hey, don't come to me until so-and-so has approved it or until that unit has approved it at this level. That will help hopefully prevent some of those contracts that end up falling away, and yet you spent your time on it. Signature, you know how I feel. You need to move to electronic signature for some subset of your contracts at least, but please move into it if you can at all. Now's the time, if not before. There are great solutions on the market. They're tested. There's a few leaders. It isn't as complex as the CLM technology landscape. They're out there. Pick up DocuSign, HelloSign, Adobe Sign. Maybe one's bought the other by now. Look those up. They are sure bets. Please do this if you haven't. And for goodness sakes, stay out of this process as much as you can. Get out of this process. Somebody else should be doing this, definitely not attorneys, but likely not the legal department at all. Storage, moving into the cloud. If you are looking into a new repository, think about the repository specifically for contracts now. There are great generic repositories, but if you're really thinking about being able to then do smart stuff with the documents that you've stored, focus on CLM systems that have a strong repository, or CLM systems that were born out of being a repository, and that is their strength. But everybody should be able to find their contracts more easily than we do today. I will say problem 0, not even problem 1, that I hear from every law department I speak with, they can't find their stuff. That's where we start. Can't find our contracts. And yet they're talking to me about artificial intelligence, extracting and tracking deviations from that data protection provision from 7 years ago, because they want to be able to report on this and these wonderful dreams that they frankly are simply not ready for, because they cannot even locate their existing contracts today. Is a problem everybody has. Nothing to be ashamed of. We're all in this together, but focus on these high priority areas, and you'll be much more successful with any technology roadmap. And then, of course, the management. We need legal to get out of this. Post-signature contract management, term management, obligation tracking is not a place for the law department to play. Please figure out who else in your enterprise should be doing that, but I really hope it's not the lawyers. So that's a roundup of our phases around CLM, and I am ready for another poll, especially having heard all that. I'm wondering if this will help trigger maybe some slightly different answers. I'd love to know the role you all are playing today. Are we clear on it, what it should be?
So there was a really active chat in the chat box before this about basically what's a good contract management process in terms of what contracts should legal handle, what should they not, thresholds, not threshold, templates, if they are unedited, should they just be approved? A whole lot of great chatter in the chat box about that. I think I want to hold off on diving into those topics for now, and let's proceed with the presentation, and then we'll dive into it in Q&A. And people can stick around.
Let me send a box of chocolates to all those who asked the questions, because we're actually coming to some of that in a minute. We're going to dive a little bit deeper into the policy, which I think will answer some of these, and then happy to save time for Q&A at the end.
Awesome.
All right. Let's see how we're doing on our poll. Okay. We've got a clear point here to make. We've got half that are working to define your policy. Congratulations, you're on your first step to recovery. I'm very excited to hear that. This is important. This is the first step. Many departments don't realize that is the first step, and many are. It's hard to take the time to do that. You have to ask some self-reflective questions. You can probably get into some very interesting discussions and debates internally. A lot of what I hear is we can't trust the business. We have to look at this. We can't trust. We hear that all the time. I hear you. I believe you. I understand that is a reality. But the lack of skill set in the business should not be what determines and defines the workload of a law department. You're a law department. Your legal department, there's a reason that we're created, we're brought in-house. There's a reason we come in-house. We want to be the legal advisors around the business goals, right? That's what we want to be. The fact that we have to overfunction is a very common syndrome. I just see it in almost every law department. We tend to overfunction, and I'll tell you what it is. We're taught to mitigate risk. And if we see a risk, we're going to jump in and fix it. Oftentimes the risk is that the person that's been entrusted with something can't do it. We're going to jump in and fix it. So I appreciate this isn't an easy exercise, but it's an important one. For those of you who aren't sure where to start, you just are going to ask yourself some questions. We'll get to those in a minute, and we're going to talk about how you start to define a policy. Those of you who are just realizing, great. We're going to get you up to that working to define very, very quickly. And those of you who are clear, that is fantastic. We've got about a quarter of you. That is great. Now you can jump into the templates, the playbooks, the empowerment guides, the process flows, and all that other good stuff if you haven't already. Wonderful. Okay, we will move right on in that case. I know in the interest of time, again, there's so much meaty stuff here, so much to think about. And just yesterday, I talked with an in-house lawyer on the phone, and he beautifully summarized, oh my God, I didn't know what I didn't know. They're about to pick a system. They're down to 2. I didn't even talk about the systems. Okay, I don't, I'm system agnostic completely, but realized they hadn't thought through so many of these things yet. And it kind of comes to light once you try to implement. So again, this is why my tales of caution are always around pre-tech selection, pre-automation, the kind of homework you can be doing. Okay, approaching a legal review policy. For those who are just getting started or don't know where to start, I try to think of it as a bit of a triangle. We need to think about high risk, medium risk, low risk. You've got to do some work to create some buckets around the contracting work that comes into the legal team. Again, this isn't how we think. So to stop ourselves and force ourselves into a box, and we do this, I have in my book a matrix that people can very easily kind of plot their types of characters along the high risk axis and then the complexity. Another one we do is risk and volume, right? So if there are 3 high risk contracts a quarter, that's very different than 100 high risk contracts a quarter. And what you do with those and how you approach those will all be influenced by that. So think about the high risk, the medium risk, and the low risk. What should be, owned by legal? What can be trained to some sort of a contract management team, perhaps, that are experts in contracting? And then, of course, you've got the bottom, which is the rest of the business. For those of you who are in smaller companies, you don't have all these different layers. You've got a legal team, and then you've got the business, whether it is business owners or those people who actually whose job is to do some contracts. That's still on that bottom rung. Some companies have really more focused contract management professionals in procurement, usually, oftentimes on a revenue side, if you have kind of a deals desk, and certainly tech companies. But those are fewer and far between. But those are the ones I want you all to look at. If you have them, make them do the work. If you have them, then you are in your first step of creating a legal review policy that says legal doesn't need to review these kind of contracts, but this other function does. Work with them to get them signed up and jointly develop a policy, because it can be a combined policy that isn't just about what legal does and doesn't do, but it's also about if legal doesn't review it, hey, there is somebody else though who does want to review it. So if you have those in the department in your company, identify them, work with them on creating a policy. A policy can't be written by legal alone. I will tell you that, because no matter what you do, there are going to be people in the bottom of this triangle, the people who, and in this case, I'm using procurement and some of the examples in the right bullets, but there are people on the bottom of this triangle who are going to go, what? I'm on my own now. What do you mean I can't call legal? Legal might have been a crutch. Legal might have been a safety valve, a security blanket, or just an offload of work that, hey, great, legal will step in and do that. Your policy has to contemplate that change. So when you write a policy, it isn't just a statement of your rule. From now on, we're not going to do this, or we're only going to do this. You really have to think through, okay, what does that mean in terms of the change? You don't have to implement all those changes, but you have to be ready for it. That's where the process mapping comes in. All the people, the tools, the processes we've talked about will come from this. So first and foremost, you've got to figure out your categories of contracts to know what you're dealing with even today. We have a lot of law departments who don't quite even know what they're dealing with in order to draft a policy. A few tips on the policy itself. You've done a little bit of homework, you know what it is, you know what you want it to be. You're answering the question of what we should and shouldn't review, yes, but there's so many ways you can slice and dice the policy. You can separate it by contract type, buy side, sell side, no money, and NDAs, for example. That's a contract type. You can also do it by transaction type. So don't call it a contract type, because I've seen policies written around a name of a contract, MSA. If you're doing a master services agreement, then these rules apply. Well, that may work for some companies, it may not work for others. Think about the transaction. So describe what it is that the business is trying to accomplish. You are trying to exchange intellectual property. Whoa, that could be in and of itself a a category of transactions that legal wants to be involved in, regardless of what you call the document. It could be a master license agreement. It could be a cross information exchange agreement, you name it. So it has to work for you. There is no one template for this. There are some good best practices, but not one template. It has to work for you. Thresholds are a very, very easy place to start. And there's some contracts below a certain threshold, certain types of engagements below a certain threshold, legal will stay out of. A lot of my clients actually now have that. They come to me with that and go, hey, we don't want to look at anything below. And I've heard it all from 10,000, 50,000. I've got one that's 100,000, but it always has caveats, right? It's 100,000 if they use our paper. That's great. That's easy. And if they don't negotiate anything in our paper, well, then I kind of have to call, hey, wait, whoa. Of course, legal shouldn't be tapped in on anything where they're not negotiating your standard terms. If you are able to push your template to a third party and they sign it, there is no need for legal to say, yes, that's right. Now, could it be the wrong template? Yep. It may not be reflective of the engagement. Absolutely. That has to be a business problem. Those are, again, where I'll have a hard and fast opinion that says, please, legal, stay out of any situation where you have empowered the business with a template. You don't need to make sure they send the right template. Do you want to? Yes. Will it make us feel better? Yes, but that is just not a good use of your time. So think about writing the policy also that thinks about where do templates already exist. So maybe that's a faster, quicker win. A lot of the name of the game in CLM is small incremental changes and quick wins along the way. People confuse CLM improvement with implementing a big new shiny system. Rarely does it feel like a big win. And rarely does the big bang approach work. So incremental wins is what this is all about. Even the policy will evolve over time. It should evolve over time. In order for it to evolve over time, it has to be communicated appropriately. One more note before we get into communication, please do not mix approvals into your legal review policy. There needs to be a contract approval policy as well. That is a policy that is co-written, co-owned, and co-sponsored between legal, finance usually, maybe head of sales, again, whatever departments, maybe IT, if you're buying a lot of tech or dealing with a lot of tech. Almost every company is these days, and that'll only continue to increase. So just be sure you're crisp on, these are your rules of when to reach legal for contracts. That's really what we're trying to answer. Communicating the policy. Use simple language in this policy. Everything I've just described can get really complicated really quickly. I have seen policies written like contracts. They have, defined terms in quotes. They have words like here and after. I don't think I've seen one with notwithstanding the foregoing. And if I do, I will shame this policy publicly. Please do not use words like that. No business will read it. They will not read it. They don't want to read it. They won't understand it. And they will just blame, again, legal for being disconnected from business needs. So simple drafting. Use words like you and we. When you think legal department, we, you, anybody outside the legal department. That's okay. As simple as possible, which, by the way, contract drafting also should be simple, but that's a whole other session for another time. Make the policies operational and actionable as possible. So don't just, again, state the rules, because we're good at that. We're lawyers. You don't need to come to us for this. Great. Well, what do I do? So if you have any links to templates, links to online guidance, or even if they're going to be coming, that's okay. Put those placeholders in there. Know that you are thinking operationally. Make sure that you have accepted SMART risks and that this policy, the way you communicate the purpose of the policy, is for advancing business goals. That's why you're doing this, is to make the business move faster. You want the business to be more effective and efficient, so legal is creating this policy. This isn't for legal to get out of doing work. This isn't for legal to not be there to support. I hear that a lot as well. I hear law departments react of, but I need to be here to support the clients. Yes, but we overfunction and we become a crutch. Support them for what they really need your support, not for what they say they need your support. The business shouldn't be at that individual level, every business person deciding what your workload and day job looks like. The C-suite with the strategies and the goals for the company absolutely should be, and then you as the legal department are there to enable it and use your time most effectively. So remember that in your communication. The purpose of this policy is to support the business. And very, very important is, of course, to engage the leaders, engage key stakeholders. These are people you want them to be your champions. These are the people you want in the C-suite that are going to go, yes, we're so sick of poor legal. I don't know if they're going to say poor legal, but we're so sick of legal always being thrown in. It's the legal's fault. It can't be legal's fault. And they usually have a great relationship with the GC or the CLO. And they can say, we get it. We know it's not legal's fault, but contracting is always connected with legal, bringing us back to some of my opening remarks. So engage the leadership. They should be your best friends in this. Every CFO, COO, and CEO should want to know that their GC or CLO has a vision, has a plan for what they should and shouldn't be doing when it comes to commercial contracting. And remember, from the business perspective, they just want to get the deal done. It's all about speed. They assume you're mitigating the risk. That's table stakes. That's why they come to legal. They can sleep well at night. They can stay away from any concepts of risk because they've kind of handed that off to legal. Their number one goal is speed. Speed, get it done. And you got to show them, yes, you were hearing that and you know that, even though our really number one job is risk and compliance type of things. Okay, so I think, with that, I'll spend just a couple of minutes on data. Because that is how you get the attention of the business. Everything I just described, using the right words, communicating a policy, creating a policy, it's hard to do it when you don't know what's coming in through your department. If I said problem 0 is finding contracts, I would say problem 1 is law departments can't answer some basic questions about how many contracts would come through and what time it takes, the turnaround time. How long are we spending on what contract? That is the number one question every law department should be able to answer. You've got to know how many deals are coming through. The days of we're so busy, we need more headcount. Those are ending if you can't follow it up with because this is the volume we've seen. This is the increase we've seen. Here's the pattern over the last year. Or for every new 10 salespeople that are hired, that seems to translate into X number of contracts. Or for any number of deals closed or IT purchases made of these dollar values, something that gives insights into the C-suite on the use of resources in the law department, it's going to become table stakes. Our days of it depends, we're not sure in law departments, those aren't answers that many C-suites are accepting anymore from their legal teams. So the push for data is only going to increase. There is no point in which data will stop being interesting, certainly not to the CFO, the CEO, or the COO. They're just not used to getting it from legal, but they're starting to ask. Hence the rise of legal ops. And we haven't talked at all about legal operations. It's a related topic. It's kind of on top of this move and push for operational efficiencies, processes, improvements, technologies. And we'll probably have either an upcoming session or we should do one, if we haven't yet, on legal ops, what it can mean for your department, how to do it for you, for yourself, with or without extra resources. But a lot of what legal ops today focuses on and hears about or discusses is data. Data is a bit of a buzzword, but it is key. Once you get more mature, you can do cost per transaction. You can track data around the readability of your documents and your contracts itself when you're trying to write more simple language contracts. Data points around dollar value and contract numbers, time spent is all very interesting to the C-suite. Obviously, data points around obligations. What are we failing? What are we missing on? That's a more business-focused data point, but certainly if legal is driving CLM improvements and certainly CLM technologies, they would be a great partner to getting their support if this is the kind of data you can extract. And then, of course, substantively, we love to get some data points on deviations on our terms. Some of it is kind of a desire to want the data, but we aren't sure if we're going to actually use it or for what. And sometimes the data is interesting, but not actionable. Be careful on the excitability of data, but some of it is super useful. I quickly flashed through this. I just want to come back here for a minute. This is one of my most favorite visualizations of data that I used to use in my day job. This is real. This is a geographic breakdown of the volume of contracts that was coming through in that 20,000 that we used to outsource annually at Microsoft. And as you can see, there are teeny, tiny boxes in the lower right-hand corner. Let me tell you what I use this for. and I think some of you have these conversations, certainly when there are subsidiaries. You're developing templates, you're designing guidebooks and playbooks and processes, and you're trying to be more efficient. And you have to globalize those when you live in a global economy. And you need to localize for language, for law, all of that. I would get requests for local support. And if it came from one of those countries in the lower right-hand box, it was a way for me to operationally and in a data-driven way say, I can't spend a lot of resource to solve for something that is this number of deals. So what is the better way for us to help you? Perhaps help yourself. It's a tough conversation. It's one that without this data, it is even tougher. You can't have the conversation. Why not? If you can't show operationally where you have to spend your time. This isn't just about the 80-20 rule or the 90-10 rule or whatever your comfort is. This is hard data, right? So if I'm going to invest time and money and templates and playbooks and get external resourcing and help, I'm going to have to go by some of these bigger boxes. So just one example, but it's a very real one, and it helped me improve my business and be more efficient in my 13-year journey when I was in-house. With that, I think we're kind of at the right stopping point. I'm well into my hour plus. I do want to open the door to conversation and Q&A, and I'll hand it over to Shai, but please connect with me. Please ask questions. Grab my little book. It's short, it is so easy, and it has actionable checklists. But I'm here to help. I love this topic. Shai, I'll hand it off to you.
Awesome. So thank you, Lucy. I'm amazed that 245 people are still engaged. Where can you drop a link to the book, Lucy? Maybe like an Amazon link?
Yeah, see, check out this QR code for those of you who have your cell phones. See if this works. We love to experiment with technology.
Okay, so first of all, again, thank you so much for such an informative and engaging presentation. I have a few great questions. For a startup, how do we shift the CLM evaluation process to another team? We're currently evaluating several SaaS tools, narrowed it down to one, but I'm leading the process on every front, including getting business buy-in. And I guess a related question, and this came another one, like shortly thereafter, who is like a natural ally for legal to partner with on implementing a CLM platform in your experience?
Just really quickly, if you're focused on buy side, look for procurement. If you have a procurement leader, if you have a strong procurement team, if not, go up to finance. So buy side finance, usually a fantastic partner. If you're looking at sales side contract, there's got to be a head of revenue somewhere, a CRO, a COO, somebody who's interested in getting deal velocity. Those are the words they use. Use those words if you're with them. If you're looking at CLM to help solve the law department's workflows and processes and be more efficient as a legal team, then you have to find an executive who, who's a friend of the legal department. It almost doesn't matter if they're buy side or sell side. I like to go buy side or sell side because it just feels like they're invested in a particular business goal, and you can use that language. But at the highest level, I would say anybody in the C-suite who's a friend of the law department that can say yes, give them the resources, yes, help them, is really helpful. Sometimes the head of IT, if you have a CIO, a CTO, somebody in kind of a technology leadership role that can say, you know what, this actually can help across the whole enterprise. CLM, remember, it's an enterprise system, often not implemented as one. Other enterprise systems are implemented as an enterprise system by IT usually, or they're involved and engaged, but somehow CLM tends to fall to legal. Sometimes that's good and that's okay, but you need those business colleagues. You need those counterparts for sure. Even if it's just about your own processes, show them that if you help us do this better and faster, we'll get all kinds of business done faster and better. So I hope that helps. I also say that if you are the person leading this effort inside the law department, and you are an attorney, and you have a full-time job, which I'm assuming you do, this is not an easy side project to pick up. It's just a word of caution. It's not. I'll give you some examples that maybe you all have touched upon or seen in other areas of the kind of legal operations technology world. In the area of spend management, automated invoicing, e-billing, electronic billing, spend management, maybe you've heard these kind of systems and tools. Maybe you use one, Simple Legal, Legal Tracker, Serengeti, or you've heard of them from your law firm days. Those are different. Those are great examples of legal tech that's implemented by the law department that helps with a very operational infrastructural need for reviewing invoices faster, for example, or managing your budget more effectively. But that's infrastructural and isn't affecting your day job. When you're trying to implement a CLM system into a law department, you are going to affect the day jobs of your commercial contracts lawyers. You are going to want them to do different things. Learn different buttons, learn a different view of some new thing on their laptop, on their PCs that they haven't seen before. It's not like downloading an Uber app, and it's not like one of these spend management systems that you're like, okay, well, it's my invoicing, whatever, I'll figure out a way to do it. It's kind of a necessary thing. You're kind of cutting at the core of people's value proposition in their day job. That takes time. The change management is not to be underestimated here. It's all about changing human behavior more than it is the technology itself. So I'll get off my soapbox. Change management, hashtag. It's important.
Got it. Okay, last call for questions, but just to touch on the conversation we had in the chat, I mean, I guess you're in general agreement that, or let me ask you this. Do you have any resources for where to start on change management? Then I'll ask you my own question after that.
So resources for change management, I learned from, actually, I had hired an external consultant to help me when I was in-house at Microsoft. And I learned a ton, I have to be honest. To me, change management was, well, this makes sense. Everybody, this makes sense. Let's do it. And that was not going to win for sure. So I actually do have, I think I have a sample maybe of a change management template or roadmap even in my book. If not, I can share one, certainly, if you want to reach out to me on LinkedIn. It's going to be generic, but it should help you think through how to communicate a change. Change management is a lot about communication, absolutely. What you say, to whom, how often, how many times. People have to hear things over and over. But change management when it comes to technology is also, remember, you can only do so much training, so much pushing of words and screenshots and workflows until you're in it. It is not like an Uber app. It is not. And by the way, even in an Uber app, you got to know the difference between an Uber XL and an Uber X. You got to know the difference between plan ahead or I can wait when you can get a couple of bucks cheaper. We become conditioned to it because we're living in it and we're using it. Every time we use it, we're like, oh yeah, I know how to do this thing. CLM systems, if you're not in them all the time, that change management is an ongoing journey. There's always somebody new. There's always somebody who hasn't been in there for months. So I do have some things I can share. But this is one thing where if your system is complex enough or your organization is big enough, change management becomes its own kind of work stream, frankly, and is better assisted by somebody who's done it before. Kind of depends on the complexity of your enterprise and the number of people you're trying to impact.
Got it. So my question is, what is your thoughts on a revenue or a dollar number for, legal should review contracts 100K or and above? Do you agree? Do you not agree? Because, right, the old pushback is, there's plenty of risks in contracts that are below those thresholds, right? And many disasters. So what do you think about that?
So my answer always to those and the disasters and the risk is not to be flippant, but I always ask, okay, and so what? What was the disaster? So what? Did you lose some money? Does that amount of money equal the amount of hours, time, and energy you would have spent in potential deal loss by adding in more complexity into the negotiation? So it is all about smart risk taking. It is all about that. And there is no perfect answer for everyone. So just like a number cutoff. I hate saying it depends, but it does. If you're a Microsoft, again, speaking from personal experience, my number cutoff is going to be very different than if you are a company that makes 10 million in revenue a year. Obviously, you make 10 million in revenue, you may not even have an in-house counsel. By the time you get to a point where you have an in-house counsel, you're probably making enough that you can do a cutoff 50,000 on the buy side procurement. It's going to be third-party template. If you're buying SaaS, right? Everybody's buying SaaS today. You have to buy SaaS. You can't run a business without buying software as a service. If you're going to be buying an Office 365 license, you're going to accept Microsoft's terms. You should just click and move forward. You kind of just should. And there's a lot of those. I see that people are still trying to negotiate up a hill where they just won't win. Because guess what? you need Office 365. G Suite, fine. I don't care what it is. If you need it, you're going to spend the money. No amount of legal negotiation on something that's under 50,000 for those companies will they spend time on. So they'll simply walk away.
Right.
You can't tank your business that way.
But what about a Salesforce? Same thing?
If you're trying to buy Salesforce,
Yeah.
oh yeah, of course. Salesforce is not going to negotiate under 50,000. I mean, again, who are you trying to buy Salesforce? Do you have a sales team of 5,000 people? That's a lot of license seats. So maybe Salesforce will listen. If you're 5, they're just not going to listen. They're going to have a click through online. And if you're going to go back and say, hey, let's download that into PDF, I'm going to convert it to Word, I'm going to send them some red lines, you are doing a disservice to your business. I guarantee it.
I agree. All right. Awesome. Thank you again, Lucy. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in.